Okay, today we're going to talk about something totally new. We're going to talk about something called abstract. Last week, when we worked on our collage a little bit, we discovered that not everything in the picture had to be a realistic shape. And it is true that collage has many abstract elements. In fact, collage can be abstract. But today, I want to talk about the whole abstract art movement and what happened. In the 1800s, a man named Mr. Eastman created a machine. The machine ruined art. And of course, that machine was the camera. Remember, before the invention of the camera, it was the job of the artist to make real. If your parents wanted a picture of you, they had to have an artist paint it. But after the invention of the camera, all they needed to do was say cheese, click, and there you were in all your glory. Artists all agreed the camera ruined art. Or at least it ruined art the way it had always been. Did it really ruin art? No, because that meant that instead of just looking at the real world, artists looked beyond the real world into their imaginations. And artists didn't just create what they saw, they changed that visual story and created something more. And who do you think started it? We've already said his name. Pablo Picasso. I showed you a little bit of Pablo Picasso's collage, but I want to show you some of his first form of abstract art. You know, Pablo Picasso was really a sculptor. He liked to make things 3D. He liked to sculpt shapes. But because he lived so much in his imagination, he wanted to show sculpted shapes on a flat piece of paper. And he wanted to figure a way that he could do that. And so he created this first form of abstract art in an attempt to show us more than one side of an object on a flat piece of paper. And the critics named this art Cubism, because the way he did it, it made it look like everything was a cube. I want to show you a picture. This is a landscape picture by Pablo Picasso. It's got hills. It's got a wonderful bridge. It's got houses. And it looks like this. Whoa, wait. Can you see any of those things in this picture? Well, look carefully. If you look carefully, you'll see the house. And if you look carefully, you'll see the hills and the houses behind on the hills. And you can see the bridge that's leading on. Notice that the bridge is the only curved line in this entire picture. Everything else is a straight line. And many of those lines are creating cubes. Hence the name Cubism. Let's see if I can find you another one. Pablo actually invented 3 different kinds of cubism, but this one, called analytical cubism, was the very first of the 3 he invented. One day a friend of his named Daniel came over to visit him and he says, "Hey Daniel, sit down, I want to paint your picture." Daniel says, "Whoa, okay. Gosh, the famous Pablo Picasso wants to paint my picture." And so Daniel sat down and he waited while Pablo worked furiously on his canvas. And when he was done, here is what he did. "Daniel, check it out. Wait, what? Holy moly." Daniel looked at that picture for a long time before he saw any part of himself in it. If you look carefully, you can find his face. But the rest of him, oh my goodness, he kind of disappears into the picture, doesn't he? And notice, almost every line in this picture is a straight line. Very few curvilinear lines can be seen in this picture. This is Cubism, and this is his friend, Daniel Conweiler, turned into a cubistic painting. Ha! Did you like that one? Check this one out. This is a man with a pipe. Okay, if you tell me so. Can you see the man? Can you see his pipe? Holy moly. Did you notice that Pablo doesn't use a lot of colors in his pictures? Well, not in these pictures. In analytical cubism, he didn't care about color at all. What he was looking at, what he was exploring with was shape. And how could he change shape to make it interesting and not real? Later on, Pablo changed his cubism and simplified it and added more color. Now this piece is called The Studio, and it's a painting of Pablo doing a painting. Okay, let's see if you can see Pablo. Let's see if you can see his painting. Again, I want you to notice there are very few curvilinear lines in this picture. Mostly, they are straight lines. Do you see Pablo? Do you see his painting? Do you see how he's really simplified the shape? Here, he is not analyzing anyone. He's not trying to figure out how the shapes make up the person. He is just dictating shapes. He's saying, all right, this mark right here, this is going to be me. That's me. That's my shape. There's no basis in truth for that shape. It's just what he decided. And this is called synthetic cubism. He synthesizes. It's not real. Let's see if I can find one more. Here's a final one. And this was his third kind of cubism. This kind of cubism he did much later in his life, and he called this one decorative cubism. He wanted to decorate his canvas with shapes. Now he's going to talk a lot about color. Here we go, decorative cubism. And this painting is called After Velázquez. You know what he did? In order to find a subject to be interesting for his painting, you know what he did? And you can do this anytime, and it's really kind of fun, and it's kind of cool that Pablo did it. He gave us permission to do it too. He went and looked at a famous artist's painting. He chose a painting by the Spanish artist Velázquez. Velázquez, there. I wasn't putting the accent in the right spot, and I was checking it. Velázquez. Now, he was a very famous Spanish artist who had lived hundreds and hundreds of years before, and he did these beautiful, realistic portraits. But of course, Pablo doesn't care about realism now. If you want real, you take a photograph. Pablo wanted to create something new and creative. And using decorative cubism, Pablo copied his painting. Now, we know it's okay to copy an art, right? No problem there. But wait till you see how his interpretation of the famous painting looks. Check this out. Decorative cubism. What? Can you see the dog down here? He's still using arbitrary shapes any way he wants to. But check out everything else in this picture. Can you even tell that there are more people in this picture? There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people in this picture. There are many books and many other things. But mostly what this picture does is decorate the page. It's lots of beautiful color. So in Cubism, you have analytical, which was the first one, no color. He was just analyzing shapes. Then you have synthetic, which means he's just doing whatever he wants. Added a little color there. And at the end of his life, he went back and created decorative cubism, where he went all out crazy with the shapes and the colors. Pablo Picasso was an amazing artist. Can I show you another simple cubistic painting? Check out this one. A pot, a jug, and a candle. Here is where he's gone from analytical into synthetic. We know this isn't analytical because he hasn't shown us how he analyzed the shape of the pot and the pitcher. Not so much. He's simplified. He's made it synthetic. Very simple, arbitrary shapes. Notice how he's adding the blue and the yellow back into his pictures of grays. Generally what we see are grays and browns. A pitcher, a candle, and a pot. All right. That's Pablo for you. He's an amazing artist. We could talk about him. Maybe we'll do a series about Pablo. Okay, today we are going to explore abstract art. Today, I want to show you a simple way to make cubism. One that's not so complicated that you're going, I don't understand. Are you ready? It's going to be fun. Now, you're going to need a piece of paper and a black crayon or a black marker. Let's see if I can find my crayon, because you know how much I love crayons. There we go, my black crayon. In fact, I would prefer a black crayon for this process, and you'll see why next week when we go to color it in. Okay, now I've got my piece of paper here, and what I'm thinking about, do I really need to have these objects in front of me? Since in the end, they're not going to look very much like they do in real life. No. I think what I'm going to do is first, because it's always a nice thing to do first, I'm going to format my page. Now remember, when I say I'm going to format it, it means I'm going to create a picture frame. Then I know how far the color is going to do. Does that picture frame need to be perfect? Well, you can see by mine, it's not. All right, so now I know that my picture has to fill up inside this picture frame, this format. And don't forget everything we've learned so far. And one of the most important things being, art can never be too big, it can only be too small. Now, because we're going to draw this picture first with a crayon, which means we can't erase lines or change lines, or we shouldn't, I'm going to start by drawing my first object right here. I get to draw whatever I want, and so do you. And I'm thinking about some of the things that we've drawn and some of the things that I've enjoyed. Ooh, and I'm thinking about that delicata squash. I almost couldn't say it. Delicata squash. That was kind of a cool shape, wasn't it? Kind of like a cucumber, sort of, right? So I think I'm going to put a delicata squash right in the front of my picture, nice and big. And I think I'm going to put it right about here. And I'm just going to draw a simple line drawing. Now, if I remember, that squash had a few lines in it, didn't it? So I'm going to put a few lines in it. Now that looks, I'm going to give it a little knobby at the bottom too. There we go. There's my delicata squash, okay? And I put it in the front so that everything else I can put behind it, and it will make a nice picture. And I know that if I want to make something behind, I always break the line where the two lines meet. The delicata squash meets my next one. And my next shape I'm going to draw is going to be that good old coffee mug. Remember that coffee mug we drew? Let's try it. I'm going to put in my, do you remember what that shape's called? Does anybody remember that shape? Ellipse, the squash circle at the top. And then I'm going to come down the sides of my mug. Oops, had to stop because the delicata squash is in the way. Come down the side of my mug. Oops, again, I have to stop because the squash is in the way. I'm going to put in my handle. There we go. There's my mug. A simple line drawing, all right? Still looks a little 3D because I've put in my ellipse, my squash circle at the top. Now, one more thing. I like 3 things in my picture, and I do have a little empty space up here that I would like to fill. So I think for my last shape, I am going to put behind. I don't want it to be too complicated. So you know what I think I'm going to use? My school glue. Now look at this shape. Straight down curve, and then this funny little lid. Well, mostly, I'm not going to be able, I think I'm going to put him right about here. Mostly, I'm not going to be able to see very much of it, right? Because it's going to be behind, right? So I'm going to come up here. Do you see that the top is a circle? So we know that we're going to have to add another one of those ellipses. But I'm going to be careful because I think the first thing I'm going to draw is the lid. I'm going to put on my pointy lid very simply. I don't want this to be too complicated. And then I have a little bit of ellipse here in the top of the jar. Comes down, that's the lid. All right, whoops. And then I have another bigger ellipse that is the top of my glue. Now look, I stop my lines wherever I hit. And then I'm going to come down, 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 down to the bottom. Oops, I won't be able to see the down, down, down on that side. Whoa, look at how short and squashy. That's okay. Does it have to be perfect? No, it's simple. Then I don't want things floating in the air, so I'm going to put one line back here. Do you see this one line? And do you see how that makes the table? Now my objects aren't floating. Now my objects are actually sitting somewhere. Well, that's pretty simple right there. But is it cubistic? No, it's still pretty real. Now I'm going to turn it into cubism, and I'm going to show you how to do that. You're going to need another piece of paper. Now I've decided to use one of my catalog pages from last week, and it's about the same size. So what I want to do is I want to cut this down, and I want to make some rectangles. So first, I'm going to just fold my paper like this so that it's going to be smaller than my total picture. All right, I'm folding it, and I want to keep my lines fairly straight. So now I have this nice crease. Look, it's right along that line. It's going to make it really easy to cut. And I'm going to cut my rectangle right there along that line. Now I have 2 smaller rectangles. I'm probably going to use both. Start with the bigger one. And I'm going to take my rectangle. You know what I'm going to do with it now? Oh boy, this is going to get really complicated. Remember the picture of his friend? I'm going to lay my rectangle right here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw around it. I'm going to put this rectangle shape right in the middle here. This is going to start making what I would call synthetic cubism. All right. And when I pull it away, oh, look at how my shape has changed those shapes. Now I'm going to take my rectangle. Let's try this one. All right, I'm going to use this rectangle. And I'm going to put this rectangle in a different spot of my picture, and I'm going to draw around it. Now remember, your lines don't have to be perfect. You kind of want them to stay straight. Remember that Pablo didn't use a whole lot of curvilinear lines. We have plenty of curvilinear lines in our squash and our mug and our glue bottle. There we go. And I'm going to take that away. Well, that's getting a little confusing, isn't it? Now I'm going to take this little one and I'm going to fold it like this and make yet a smaller shape. And I'm going to cut off that smaller rectangle. And this time, for fun, I'm going to take my smaller rectangle and I'm going to put it in diagonal. Let's see if I can get it diagonal on my page. And I am going to trace around my shape diagonally. Oh, I didn't quite get that line in there. There we go. See that diagonal now on top? Is it getting a little crazy? Now I'm going to take it and do it again. Only this time I'm going to put it diagonally in this direction on my picture like this. Diagonally. Trying to trace around, trying to keep my shapes relatively straight. Is it getting a little confusing to look at? Oh, goody! Now I'm going to take this shape and I'm going to set this into my picture, maybe right about here. And I'm just going to draw with my crayon over this. Shape's almost a square, isn't it? Straight edges. Trace around it. Oh boy. What's my picture going to look like now? Aha! Ha 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 ha. Hi, yi, yi. That's getting pretty confusing, isn't it? Now I'm going to take my little rectangle. I'm going to fold it in half and I'm going to make it even smaller and skinnier. Okay, see that? And now I'm going to cut that. All right, now I've got this really skinny rectangle, and I'm going to bring my really skinny rectangle, and you see how it's more simple in here? I'm going to complicate this part of my picture a little bit, and I am going to put this skinny rectangle right here. There we go. And I think I'm going to put it right here too, right at the bottom of my composition. I'm even going to go right to the edge of my format with it. Oh, this is crazy. Okay. There we go. Holy moly. Are things getting a little crazy in this picture? Is this going to look a little bit like Dan Conweiler when we're done? I think so. I like that small rectangle. So you know what? I'm going to put one more in here. I think I'm going to go to the top of the page, right about here. And I'm going to put another rectangle in here. You can do this as many times as you want. You don't want to put in too many. This is not, oh, I did miss my lines. This is synthetic cubism. So we don't need to have gazillions of lines like analytical cubism does. In fact, I think I've got enough lines here because it's really, really hard now to see my different shapes that I had in my picture, isn't it? Which is exactly what I wanted to do, okay? So the only thing I'm going to do to finish this up today is this. I'm probably going to go back over my lines, and what I'm going to be doing now is looking at the new shapes that I've made. Did you see that shape I just outlined? I've got another new shape right here. I'm going to outline this shape right here. It comes down, goes around. Now this shape is not anything, is it? It is an abstract shape. And this is what we're going to be looking at next week. I see another shape right here, and I'm going to outline that. And then I see another shape right here. And these shapes don't mean anything by themselves. Now, you might find that you have some little shapes in here where the two shapes kind of come together and there's just a teeny tiny corner. You can ignore those. Make your shapes a little bit bigger. So I've got this shape right here, and I'm going to ignore this teeny tiny corner in here. I'm just going to outline around the bigger shape. So I'm going to go along and I'm going to outline my shapes so that I can see the shapes that I have made. Not the mug, not the squash, not the glue bottle. Now I'm going to be looking at individual shapes, and I am going to outline each one of those so that it's really, really hard in my black. And then next week, for the final piece in this series, we are going to color this in, and we're going to color it in like Pablo Picasso. It is going to be so much fun. And I'll warn you, it's going to be a little bit of work too. It's not going to be as simple as that collage was because we have a lot of shapes to talk about, okay? All right, finish outlining all your shapes. Make sure that they're nice and dark so that you can see the shapes, not the squash, not the mug, not the glue bottle. You want to see the shapes that you've just made because these shapes are going to be not real. They're going to be abstract. I'm so excited. See you next time.